everyone. Great to see you in Singapore. This is a fantastic place to be, a great conference. I'm here to just give you a quick update about Filecoin. As you know, Web3 brings trust to internet interactions. The key thing that we're all working on is bringing rights to the internet layer so that we can coordinate much more effectively on all our applications. But in order to do this, Web3 must scale. Currently, Web3 is not at all web scale. You can't, when you think about most of the consumer applications that you use on a daily basis, almost none of them use Web3 because the underlying technologies aren't yet scalable enough to be able to support these kinds of applications. Think about social networks. Think about your personal storage. Think about your productivity applications. How many of them actually use Web3? Close to zero. The underlying problem is in the scalability of blockchains themselves. So I'm here to tell you how Filecoin itself is working on this large-scale problem and aims to bring that scalability to Web3 so that we can cross the chasm. Filecoin is a crypto-powered storage network that creates a marketplace between storage providers that store people's data and clients that hire those storage providers to be able to store the data. The rough plan that we've been following is this three-step process. Step 1, build the world's largest decentralized storage network. Step 2, onboard and safeguard humanity's data in that storage. And step 3, bring compute and applications to that data. So in step 1, we've basically achieved over the last few years. We've built the world's largest, by far, decentralized storage network. And it is now large enough and big enough that it can compete with large-scale storage networks from the centralized cloud. We have over 10 exabytes of capacity in the network, which is an enormous amount. And all of these are high-grade, scalable data centers, just like the ones that you would see in normal Web 2 applications. There are large-scale hardware vendors that are leaning into the Filecoin network, groups like Seagate, AMD, and many more, that are helping the storage providers and helping those data centers get scale. Now, what the community has been focusing on the last year is in onboarding and safeguarding humanity's data in this massive scale network. And we've been scaling up the onboarding of people's data into the network. We've been doing that through a set of on-ramps. And now we have about 1,400 clients. Each of those uploads either small amounts of data or huge, vast quantities. And we have about 23% are uploading large quantities of data, so there's over 100 terabytes. A few clients are uploading vast amounts, petabytes scale. The onboarding of data into the Filecoin network happens through a set of on-ramps that help certain applications bring their data into the network, and a set of cryptoeconomic incentives that enables that data storage to be extremely cheap. An example of some on-ramps include things like Web3 storage that powers over 50,000 users to store over 100 million Web3 objects. This is starting to hit proper scale of Web 2 level achievements. But this is all for small data, so the total amount of data here is quite small. Similar to Web3 storage, there's things like NFT storage, which is a specific storage platform for that kind of assets. There's lots of different kinds of applications using systems like these. So everything from social media applications to video platforms, games, all kinds of things building on top of the Filecoin network. But what I'm most interested in is large-scale data sets coming onto the network. These are the kinds of things that you need for large-scale compute platforms. This is the kind of thing that you need for scientific research. This is the kind of thing that really puts an impact in the world. And this is where a large amount of the community has had an enormous amount of impact over the last year. We've been scaling that data onboarding, and we now have truly massive scale data sets onboarding onto the network. So these are specific examples coming from universities around the world that are trusting Filecoin with their super valuable, precious data and using the network. I mentioned the cryptoeconomic incentives. One of the interesting things that Filecoin enables is this undercutting of the prices of Web 2 storage markets. And it also enables certain kinds of things, like certain new kinds of structures that give you additional incentives. So for example, BDE managed to create this two-sided marketplace between storage providers and clients, and is able to use that incentive that I mentioned earlier to even get negatively priced storage. So that means that large-scale clients might even get paid for bringing the data to the network whenever that the economic conditions mean that applications desire that data. So now, what I've been focused on extensively for the last year and a bit, and what a lot of the community is focusing on this year and next, is to bring compute to the data, to enable an application runtime that can do that scalable computation that I talked about earlier. So we're doing this in kind of 3 parts. The first part is FVM, which brings smart contracts to the network. That shipped earlier this year. There's already a large community of builders deploying their applications on FVM. There's DeFi is one of the main components of the network because there's large-scale businesses, all the storage providers, that require capital to be able to grow their operations. And so you have an example, fully decentralized finance-style economy providing and supporting for real businesses doing traditional kinds of things. So this is an example of the power that blockchains give you, realizing transformative change in some industry. In this case, the underlying platform that we can build a lot of applications on. So the storage providers use DeFi for things like being able to borrow Filecoin for collaterals, being able to raise capital to finance their operations, and so on. People are also, of course, building applications on top of FVM, so things like content delivery networks or other different parts of the entire storage runtime. These will be, think of these as entire L2s that are building and booting up on Filecoin. We're also getting perpetual storage. So one of the big complaints that the community had about Filecoin is that we didn't have perpetual storage contracts, and now those are finally arriving into Filecoin this year, which has been great to see. So now you can, for certain amounts of data, you can now hire the network to store the data for you forever. Now that FVM has shipped and it's growing, a lot of the community is turning its eyes to the next part of this plan, which is to bring compute to the data. So this means enabling a set of computational L2s on top of Filecoin. So there's this large set of trade-offs in compute where when you think about zero-knowledge proofs or fully homomorphic encryption or optimistic computation, they're in different parts of this large trade-off space between verifiability, privacy, and performance. And so these will mean that you'll have different networks using different cryptographic schemes and different hardware and different teams orienting for specific different use cases. So instead of trying to build one compute platform that tries to do everything but can't actually succeed at that, we're building Filecoin as a great home for all of these different networks to bring their computational primitives to the Filecoin data. We said when you think about large-scale data storage, data has gravity. Once you have a lot of it, it's very difficult to move it. So once the data has been onboarded onto Filecoin, it is much easier and much cheaper to bring the computation to the data, run the computation there, and then export the results. So a lot of the computational L2s, I'll give you some examples. So one of them is ZK Lambda, where they're trying to build a structure similar to Amazon Lambda type computation, but entirely in zero knowledge, and that is an entire computational L2. Another example is the Bacalao project, which is building primitives for these type of COD networks. You can think of this as Kubernetes or Docker or those kinds of runtime environments where you're able to define some program, ship it into the network, and have it compute. Some of the example applications that people are building is generative AI use cases or LLMs or things like that. And you can now use the storage providers and the hardware that the storage providers have for these kinds of networks. So then the last step in this plan, which is where some amount of the community's focus is going, is into scaling the blockchains themselves. Our view is that blockchains today fundamentally need to scale dramatically. We need to get to billions and trillions of transactions per second. This is something that I've said for many, many years, and we're finally getting there. The entire community, most of the blockchain space is targeting something like 100,000 or maybe 1 million transactions per second. But I think we need to go dramatically higher scale to be able to support the applications that I talked about earlier. So that's the kind of stuff that we're building. And we designed a protocol called IPC, which stands for Interplanetary Consensus. And that's what enables us to scale chains to that level of scalability. Cool. The last thing I'll mention is there's a lot of there's a huge builder community in Filecoin. There's everything from hackathons to accelerators, grants, and VC funds that have built this great pipeline for developers. So it's an amazing time to get involved, especially right now in the winter when capital is scarce. Coming to a community that can help you can help partner with you and build your business is great. And so I encourage all the builders out here that are trying to build startups to come talk to us and take advantage of the programs here. Cool. So with that, that's all I have for the Filecoin update. And I have, I think, a few minutes for questions, if there's any. Cool. Any questions? Anyone? No? Cool. Yeah, back there. Yeah. Yeah. Great question. So the question here is in the, can I get the slides back up so I can go back to it? I'll start repeating the question. So in the Saturn CDN, how are we decentralizing the gateways themselves? Because that's a big problem in here, let's see. There we go. So the way that Saturn works, a CDN starts for, sorry, the question was, for the CDN, how are we decentralizing the gateways? The gateways are these services that are in between the client's computer when they have no verifiability and the rest of the network that has verifiability. And the gateways are a hard to trust thing because they could be cheating and delivering something false. So yeah, great question. So the way that Saturn works is that it has a layered architecture. So it has different layers of cache. And so you can think of the storage providers as the bottom layer of the cache. And that's kind of where the data is, but it's very difficult to move it out to the user. And each layer makes it faster, getting it closer and closer to the user. And so the last layer, the first layer, is kind of where the gateways live. And so for that, we're solving it in two ways. So one is we have some JavaScript code that can be, so there's different kinds of clients. There's clients that can run JavaScript and clients that cannot. For the clients that can run JavaScript, we are enabling a service worker upgrade where there's a specific code base, a specific endpoint that is well known in the network, that delivers just one payload that everyone can kind of agree on, and that loads a client into the browser that can then verify the rest of the content so that all of the content is precisely what it's supposed to be. Now, there are some clients that cannot run JavaScript, and so for those, you have to run a set of trusted gateways in a traditional setting, but you want to minimize those, and you want to enable more parties to run them and audit them. So today, we run the IPFS gateway, which handles billions of requests per week, and that's thousands of applications use that gateway, and that's the trust model that they're relying on. We don't like it, and so we want to go to deliver JavaScript to the user's browser to be able to verify it. But yeah, it's a great question. Any other, 3 more minutes. Any other question? Yeah, back there.
I know this is mainly for Filecoin, but I have a question for IPFS.
Sure.
So in your roadmap, what's the plan and the role for IPFS in the future?
IPFS is a large project with a fairly large roadmap. Yeah. There's lots of different builders working on different kinds of things. And so I would encourage you to look online. There's a number of different roadmaps depending on what area you care about. So there's a few hundred companies working on different parts of IPFS. Yeah. Yeah. Any other questions? Cool. Awesome. Thank you.